Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Assessing the Maturity of Your Test Automation Practice, brought to you by Ranorex and Idera Company. So my name is John Reynolds. I am a product manager here at Ranorex, and with us we have Jason.
Howdy everybody. My name is Jason Yamada. I am a solutions engineer at Ranorex. You may have heard from me before.
Yes, thanks, Jason. So we're happy to have you here. And so for today, we're going to just cover a variety of items for the maturity of your test automation and how we can, or how you can improve and make your automation processes even more mature. So we're going to cover some survey results that we ran, and with each survey result, the survey was 5 questions. Each question is broken down into a topic here, so we will cover each survey result or question, and then how we can work to improve in each area. So we covered automation maturity levels as a whole, agility, level of automation, ease of automation, reliability of automation, and responsibility for automation. So who's responsible for your test automation? And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. Oops, I went too far. There we go. So first, So we surveyed around 100 IT leaders who are part of their company's DevOps or GUI testing team in collaboration with Pulse Research, which is a subsidiary of Gartner. This data was collected from December 7th, 2021 to January 6th, 2022. And in this survey, we asked 5 questions about a team's test automation practices. And based on the answers, we were able to assign each of them one of 4 maturity levels. So these maturity levels, so as you can see here, the breakdown of some of the data for the actual survey respondents, 84% North America, 2/3 of the respondents had a title of a director. Another 26% were managers, and then about 1/3 of these companies had over 10,000 employees. The company distribution was pretty good between companies over 10,000 employees and companies less than even 1,000. So it was mostly evenly distributed for company size. So each company or respondent, based on their responses, were assigned a maturity level between emerging, developing, advancing, or mature in their test automation. So we will get into that. So basically for level 1, a team has little or no automation and largely depends on manual testing. This typically leads to longer release cycles. Team level 2, a team has begun to use some automation, but struggles with agility and realizing consistent benefits from automation. So they may still have a long release cycle, but they're at least trying to automate, or they do have some automated processes. For level 3, automation is a core part of testing and contributes to the development team's success. However, the team is yet to fully harness all of the potential of automation. And then level 4, for a mature automation team, the development team is highly agile, self-organizing, and testing is critically important to achieving developmental goals. So automated testing is easy, reliable, and is also seen as everyone's responsibility. So everyone contributes towards automation success. So let's take a look at how companies or respondents were categorized based on how they self-reported to these survey questions. So 31% were in the emerging level, 60% in developing, 9% in advancing, and only a couple of respondents ended up, which really came out to 0, came out as a mature level of automation. So really nobody fell into that category, which doesn't really surprise me. If you are looking to automate, then you probably aren't in a very mature state. Also, it is difficult to, there's a lot of work involved in getting to a fully automated system, very agile, releasing every week to 2 weeks. And then also, there's still maybe areas for improvement when you get into some maturity. So let's,
just like in life.
Yeah. Yes. So
we're always working on my maturity.
Yes. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, but there are some steps you can take to at least get from, say, emerging to developing to advancing, and eventually to mature. And so getting to a very mature state of automation does take a lot of effort and collaboration from end to end in the team. So let's talk first about agility. So our respondents, the first question asked about, how would you describe the agility of your development practice? So some more detail for, say, not at all agile. So the question is, the answer would be, we use a structured process such as waterfall. Making any changes to our workflows is a highly involved process involving multiple teams, stakeholders, and meetings. So the release cycles are measured in months or years. For a somewhat agile team, would be a combination of waterfall and scrum, or running mini waterfall sessions. Making process or workflow changes is challenging, but you manage to get through it, and release cycles are measured in weeks or months. For a mostly agile team, fairly unstructured and only large changes cause a disruption to testing processes, and release cycles are measured in days or weeks. And a highly agile team would be a team that's fully self-organizing, changes both big and small are easily implemented without any disruptions, and you can release continuously. So looking at the data here, which falls in line with the previous slide where 61% somewhat agile, not at all agile for 6% of the people. Only 2% reported that they were highly agile doing continuous delivery, and mostly agile would be about a third of the respondents here. So with that, Jason, what do you think companies could do to help improve their agility?
Absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things we talked about and kind of considered when we were thinking about agility is being able to data drive a lot of your testing. As a manual tester, you'll have to maybe copy and paste things out of a Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file or something like that, or maybe you have a little script that I don't know, parses through an Excel spreadsheet or something and then pastes stuff in for you. So we recommend, if you're going to try and improve your agility, you have something that gives you the ability to do a data-driven test, because that's going to ensure actually reliability and agility. And let's see, another thing that we considered too is a tool that you can plug into any CI or continuous integration or continuous development integration. So anything you can set and forget. So when your solutions are done being worked on for the day, or maybe your QA analyst is just finished up the test, all they need to do is click save and know that that test is going to execute the next day or at night when they're home and don't need to be executing tests.
Yeah, or as soon as a commit is sent in, there's a merge, it's committed, then it kicks off your automation and goes from there. So.
Absolutely. Another thing we thought about was cross-browser or cross-platform testing. So a test that's going to reliably execute itself against other browsers or platforms without you needing to manually trigger them or have to worry about setting up those environments manually. So a tool that has the capacity or capabilities to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And last but not least, built-in reporting. Without the reporting, it makes it a lot harder to troubleshoot issues. So what we'd like to see in a tool is something with built-in reporting that can show you, where your test failed, maybe a screenshot or a video that specifically walks through all of the actions in your test. The funny thing about all of these features is they're all included in Ranorex.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So you want a tool that to improve agility that can, eliminate those repeated items like tests you have to run on multiple browsers or where you're testing hundreds of inputs. And you also want to be able to automatically get those tests started, but also automatically be able to see the data without having to, say, build a separate reporting tool or reporting algorithms to gather that data from your tests. You want to be able to get all of that, in a single tool if possible. So on to, say, the next question from our survey. How satisfied are you with your current level of test automation? So for a little more detail on this question, so we have completely dissatisfied. So almost everything is manually tested, and this is impeding release processes. Automating any test requires buy-in from stakeholders and is a challenging process to even begin. If you are somewhat satisfied, you would have some automated tests, but only for more simple releases. Too much of testing is still manual. If you're mostly satisfied with your automation, then you're well on your way to having the desired ratio of manual automated tests, but you're not quite there yet. More complex test cases still require manual testing, but most regression tests are automated. And someone who's completely satisfied with automation would have the desired ratio of manual to automated tests, because not everything can be automated. But manual testing is almost exclusively by design and doesn't impede the release process. So when you are ready to get a build going, or you make that commit, then all of your automated tests are done, and then your manual testing can be done in parallel. But your manual testing is generally quick for those tests that really just can't be automated, your visual checks and some other aspects. So with that, we have this seems to be similar with what we've seen so far on satisfaction. So about 2/3 of people are somewhat satisfied, which falls into, say, the second tier. So all of this data is trending towards where we saw everyone was in. Most people are in level 2. Completely satisfied, about 3%, 10% completely dissatisfied, and 20% mostly satisfied. So this data is kind of lining up. It is trending. We could have put the where everybody lined up at the end of this, but the data does kind of line up. So with that, what do you think, Jason, for how can teams, or what can teams do with their automation tool to increase their level of automation?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a couple of things that we can consider definitely is choosing the right tool. So there's a lot that goes into choosing the right tool. You want to consider your team's skill set. You want to consider all of the features and functionality within that tool. You want to ensure that it has a lot of those same features we touched on in agility, and some of the features we're going to be touching on as we continue to discuss in this presentation. What we also need to consider is the team makeup as well. So understanding your team's skills and strengths. Another thing is starting with smaller repeatable tests. So we're thinking low-hanging fruit, something that requires a manual tester to maybe do multiple times, something that may require different or multiple iterations, typically like a login, logout type of scenario, where you have yourself needing to log in and out a bunch of times. Another topic that we need to consider when we're increasing our level of automation is automating more than tests. So as we mentioned earlier about agility and CI/CD, finding out a way to ensure that your tests trigger automatically. So you don't have a QA person, or maybe Bob that typically runs the tests, he's out sick today, so I guess we're not testing. Find a way to make sure that Bob can have a sick day, or Jim can take some time off, and your QA environment is not impacted.
Yeah, for sure. So the tool you choose has to match what your organization's needs. So, are you are you overpaying for a tool that provides you with mobile testing when you're not developing mobile applications? If you're just doing web testing, you want a tool that does web testing well. And yeah, like you said, the small repeatable test, low hanging fruit that goes into the data driven testing, your repeatable inputs and automating more than tests, robotic process automation, things that you are doing over and over again manually, like you said, waiting for a build to confirmation that a build is ready, and then having somebody have to go press a button or type in a script command to kick off your tests. You can do that with a CI/CD pipeline and greatly speed things up. So the next, before we go on, we do have an interactive poll here for anyone in the audience. So this question here is, how satisfied are you with your current level of automation? So we'll give people, about 30 seconds to a minute to vote, and hopefully we get some responses here from anyone in attendance. So we're getting some good votes here.
Yeah, now's your chance.
Yeah, so we are at about, we got about 2/3 people voted here. So looking at the answers here, we have, so 35% somewhat satisfied, 15% completely satisfied, it's mostly satisfied. We also have a good number of respondents who just don't know, or this doesn't really apply. So maybe there isn't any automation level. It'd be good to maybe get a little extra context there, but might not be automating at all, or you don't really have the insight into your team's full automation right now. So,
I'm also really
it's good to see. Yeah, it's good to see that 35% do say that they're at least somewhat satisfied.
And I'm also really curious to see those individuals that voted completely satisfied. It's always good to know where the benchmark is, and good to know what features or functionality or use cases you're using that are completely satisfying your needs.
Yeah, for sure. So what processes have you implemented to make things better?
And it's going back to the same conversation about maturity. We always want to use that feedback, whoever did it successfully, who didn't, to try and reach that level of mature.
Yes, imitate the best.
Yeah.
So for our next survey question, how easy or hard is it for members of your team to automate tests in your environment? So we had, each question here had a little more detail to it to explain, what you found. So for extremely easy, it's easy to identify UI elements in a reliable way. And our automation tool makes it easy to reuse and combine tests with minimum maintenance. Somewhat easy, most of our team is able to operate and automate tests in our environment. Only the most complex tests require consistent maintenance. And the tool set is relatively easy to use after a few months of experience. Or somewhat difficult, only our more talented testers can automate UI testing reliably. All except our most simple tests require constant maintenance. Complex tests are faster to do manually. And then for extremely difficult, someone would think it's challenging to find UI elements in a reliable way. Tests need constant maintenance, and the tool set is hard to use. It takes so long that sometimes it's faster just to test manually. So for extremely difficult, it seems like maybe you've chosen a tool that doesn't work well, and it doesn't suit your needs, or it's hard to use, and you'd just rather just do your manual tests because the tool that you have isn't what you need, or isn't best for. It may match the application you're testing, but it may not be good for your testers who may not have the experience needed to use the tool.
Yeah,
but in line with, go ahead.
Another thing that's curious as well that I've experienced is sometimes the application is just not built for automated testing. This extremely difficult could easily come from applications that were just not built with automation in mind. So no matter the tool, sometimes the application we're testing against just wasn't made for automated testing.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're building, say, a web tool, if you don't have sufficient IDs or identifiers inside your tool, or if it's some of the elements aren't laid out very well, or your HTML structure just isn't the best, it can be harder as well. So
I've seen quite a few websites like that built using an application that automatically generates the site. You'll wind up with so many divs and containers.
oh yes, yeah, for sure. So how can we make this easier?
Absolutely. So one of the main ways that we can make automation easier for our testing and test execution processes is creating a reusable test component, or a test with reusable components and modules. So we're thinking something like breaking up, let's say, a full end-to-end test into a bunch of smaller components that specifically focus on very specific tasks. Could be part of filling out a form, or performing a login, logout, like going back to our original example. Having a module that is strictly just for opening up your browser, and then using a little bit of data-driven testing to then cross-platform or cross-browser start that browser for that task. Next is codeless and no-code solutions for Q&A members without automation experience. So we want to provide a tool that has the capabilities of no code, such that anyone can go in and work on your tests or build your solutions. Let's say, and going back to Bob and Jim, when Bob's out sick and Jim is maybe taking time off, you could have a business analyst step in and say, okay, let me take a look at this testing tool. Let me see about fixing up some of these tests, or even potentially having like a part-time developer step in and take a quick peek at your current QA testing area and just be able to tweak it a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
And last but not least, integrating with other tools in your pipeline. So we were thinking things along the lines of test case management, bug trackers, so certain integrations that allow your tool to fit into your tech stack or your environment, such that you can maintain a seamless environment, but still have the ability to execute your tests and have it all work together.
Yeah, for sure. So, anything that makes your tests, the reusable components, for example, being able to drag and drop those into a test case and reuse them over and over again. With Ranorex, I built a sample test suite where I was testing multi-factor authentication using a username, password fields, and then the 6-digit secure code. But in my test suite, I only had the email field, the password field, and the 6-digit code field captured once. I could reuse those over and over again in all of my tests. And then the codeless no-code solutions, plugging Ranorex here, we offer codeless, no-code, also coded solutions, which could also meet your technical testers' needs. But all of these items are key to just, making it easier for your testers to do their tests without having to worry about going back in and cleaning up other things, collecting all of that data, such as, with Ranorex, you create a JUnit report, which can be pulled in by Jenkins. So in Jenkins, you can see your Ranorex test results. So you don't have to go back and forth between things or make updates in other areas as well.
Absolutely, and making automation easier really helps to tie into your agility as well, and helping to improve your team's capacity for making those changes that need to be made to those solutions.
Yeah, the more you test automatically, the more you have time to do other duties.
Absolutely.
So our next interactive poll, our second and final interactive poll for this webinar is how easy or hard is it for the members of your team to automate tests in your environment? So I would think a lot of the results would be correlated to how easy the tool is to use.
Absolutely. Seeing a lot of really interesting results here. I hope the people voting extremely easy already use Ranorex Studio.
So we are at about 2/3 voted here. So we have around a distribution of a third to somewhat difficult, another third somewhat easy, some extremely easy, and another subset that aren't sure. So extremely easy, that hopefully that's a good sign that you have a tool that's easy to use. If automation is extremely easy, it can be due to the tool you're using, but also in conjunction with your developers making software that's easier to test, adding those automation IDs that help you actually, you know, get better automation and facilitate the processes also. So it is definitely a team effort here. Just waiting on this. There we go. All right. So our fourth question here is, how would you describe the reliability of your test automation? So we have, for very flaky, you would think that you have so many failing tests that you can't even trust your regression suite. So this would tie back to the previous question where um, testing is very difficult. So if testing is not easy, then if automating is not easy, then it's likely going to be flaky. And then if you're somewhat flaky, tests often fail and it's consistently difficult to identify the problem. So you consider your current test automation unstable, unreliable. For mostly reliable, tests fail occasionally, but we're overall happy with your regression suite. When tests fail, sometimes it takes a more experienced tester to identify and resolve the issue. And then for very reliable test automation, you have few failing tests, and when they do fail, even our most junior testers can quickly pinpoint and resolve the issue. So this goes to reliability of your tests, not the reliability of your application, but your actual tests that are running. So we have a good 90% that's somewhere between somewhat flaky and mostly reliable. So there's always some kind of flakiness. Tests do fail due to various, VM not spinning up, or you could just be using Windows. But yeah, so here we see that somewhat flaky and mostly reliable. So these are tied to, they kind of go hand in hand with an application that's built well for testing, and also the tool that you're using. If your tests are, say you're using a heavily coded test suite, doing a lot of, say, PyTest, or just coded tests are going to be a little harder to maintain if they're not written very well. So the amount of maintenance required in your tests is going to be directly correlated to how flaky your tests are. So what can you do here to improve, Jason?
Absolutely. So we're always trying to improve, but finding a tool that has an easy, or makes an easier time of improvement, is part of the goal here. Maintenance mode is a mode that your tool should have that gives you the ability to execute your tests while also giving you an opportunity to troubleshoot them during the execution process. So this ensures that in the first time that you run this new test or new aspect of your solution, that you know for a fact this is going, or the new process that you've implemented will work successfully.
Yeah, it's kind of like a step-by-step debugging in an IDE.
Yeah, absolutely. Next is XPath wildcards and regex. So in this case, we called out our Ranorex path wildcards and regex. Certain other tools use image-based approaches, and they may use artificial intelligence. So really, it's trying to find a tool that has that capacity to be able to make it easier for you to troubleshoot your paths, or make it easier for you to have a more flexible way of tracking your elements. Another thing that we called out is self-healing. So in Ranorex Studio, we have a built-in self-healing for Ranorex path that can be used to ensure that if, let's say, we're having trouble finding or identifying an element at any given time, Ranorex Studio tries its best to find that element and then either pass or try to take action on that element that was found. So you want to find a tool that has the capability of self-healing during the process of the test execution.
Yeah, so you have more dynamic test elements, but also the ability to just step-by-step walk through your tests and make adjustments.
Absolutely.
So you can fix your test. If your test is flaky, you can fix your test into, say, a debug type mode or a maintenance mode that would be in Ranorex to adjust your flaky test and find out, do you need a more flexible ID, or is something moving around on your test that you need to update the actual module that you've inserted. So our final question in our poll was, who is responsible for test automation on your development team? So for a little more context here, if you have reported that you have no dedicated team, so this would mean that your testing team, or there's no dedicated testers or roles in the company that are responsible just for testing. And the same people who write your code are also testing. So you're relying on your developers to deliver quality code, and you don't have other people going back through and testing it, whether internally or even contracting out testing teams or doing crowdsourced testing, something like that. If you say that you are a small limited team, so you have a small group responsible for testing, so you just rely on a few specialists to define and implement test automation, such as test automation engineers or software development engineers in test, but it's still just a small team that contributes to your testing efforts and your automation. If you have a moderately sized team, so you have a QA team with a range of automation skills that has primary responsibility for defining and automating tests. And then finally, if everyone is responsible, so your testing team, your developers, they're all contributing to testing. So regardless of coding expertise, everyone is involved in defining and implementing test automation, from business analysts and junior testers to developers and your software development engineers in test. So here, almost as in line with the other slides that we've seen so far today, everybody has seemed this is like a level 2 response here, with most people with just a small limited team, which would contribute to flakier tests or less agile. The fewer testers involved means you probably have more bottleneck. So if you only have a few testers for a big tool, you probably have a bottleneck at QA, which will slow down your releases.
Absolutely. It's interesting seeing how these trends kind of connect together like that, because a small team with a lot of releases will cause a bottleneck, especially when you're dealing with situations where you're not, where you're somewhat automated. It's interesting how all of these numbers are kind of fall in line.
Yeah, they do seem to tie together.
So as a part of improving responsibility for automation, we recommend a tool that, again, offers a low-code, no-code solution. So capability of allowing everybody to be able to execute tests, record tests, play them back, and even people with little coding experience, being able to take a look at the tool and understand how that works without too much of an extreme technical background. Another thing we recommend for responsibility is source control. So the ability to ensure that your solution has a way to be managed, backed up, such that if these are made tests that maybe you don't want, you can always revert them or create a different branch to be able to manage that tool. I'm sorry, that solution through source control. Last is ease of sharing between solutions. So if you have a team that's maybe made up of a couple of individuals and maybe they're working through different repositories, but they want to share actions, recording modules, repository items between each other, being able to ensure that they can share those elements between each other ensures that we're not having to duplicate our efforts or our work. So that should allow for a greater sense of teamwork because you're all working on the same solution at the end of the day.
Yeah, especially say if you're running multiple versions in parallel,
Mm-hmm.
you probably are going to have, you may have different solutions for each version, or say an iOS version, an Android version. You may have very similar, you depending on how you want to organize your tests, and you definitely are going to have the same elements that get used in different areas. Or you can also just import modules and make minor changes instead of having to recreate everything from scratch. But yeah, and a lot of these, like no code, low code solutions, these are typically going to be your UI testing tools. You're not going to have many unit testing on a code level or database testing tools, which are no code solutions. But a lot of the low code, no code refers to your front end testing. But you can also still use source control integrations for some of these no code, low code solutions that will help you maintain and also manage changes over time. So kind of to sum up what we've talked about here, you can reach a mature state of testing by considering, improving and considering these factors. So the agility, improving your release speed. To improve your release speed, you're going to have to improve your automation, increase your automation, increase the speed of your testing. And increasing the speed of your testing, you have two options: hire a bunch more people or get some more automation going so your testers can do more manual tests. So increasing your level of automation ties into agility, and all of these factors do kind of tie in together as we've alluded. So the ease of automation, the easier it is to automate your tests, automate your solution, automate your build process, your deploy process, the faster you can deliver. And the easier it is, you can create more tests. If I can create 10 tests an hour in one tool and 1 test an hour in another tool, the second tool isn't nearly as easy to use, and you can do considerably more work and be more productive with a tool that meets your needs and that's easy to use. And then reliability. So as you create your tests, you need to maintain them. Every test is going to require some maintenance. You can't avoid that. But if you have tests that are written well with a tool that creates reusable items, your maintenance becomes a lot easier. So you don't have to go in and edit 50 tests. If you change the text inside your login prompt, you can just edit your module for the login prompt and then move on. And then team responsibility. So shifting testing, not only putting testing responsibilities on your testers, but also on your developers so that they write applications that can be tested, whether they're web, UI tools, but also having them have your developers also do tests, unit tests inside the code. So the more that you can test, the more test coverage you get, the better. I've said this in other webinars and other discussions. You're never going to be able to test everything, and you're never going to be able to automate everything. You can automate all your regression tests, but you're never going to be able to automate everything. You still need to look at your application and look at things to make sure they look right. Because if you just trust that your automation is always working as expected, something's going to slip by. You need your reports to look at. You need to be able to understand everything that's going on. So with that said, let's see if we have some questions from anybody in attendance here. Open up the questions area here. So from Frederico, is there an example of this codeless, no-code solutions available for review? So, oh, and then Federico said we could just ignore the question. But in general, there are a number of no-code, codeless solutions. Some solutions seem to only offer that for UI elements or UI testing. For web testing, they seem to only offer, say, natural language processing, like click on this, click on enter, press submit, but some tools don't offer, say, an IDE where you can actually have your testers that prefer to write tests just using APIs. So you want a tool that meets your needs. So codeless is great for people without a lot of automation experience. A tool that offers both coded and codeless, like Ranorex, gives you the opportunity to both do things without a lot of technical experience, but also gain that technical experience by starting with, say, code modules to write some scripts to get you some other information and feed your tests as well, make them more robust and better. We have any other questions coming in? I am not seeing any other questions come in at the moment. We had a good number of poll results, but anything you want to add here, Jason?
Yeah, so I want to say now's your chance to ask any questions. You've got the experts on the phone for you. So feel free to chime in. Really, the goal is to make sure that we can help get you to a mature testing QA project and experience. So that way you can offer your customers the best the best experience when working with your application. That's the end goal. That's the goal we all want to strive for. And hopefully the tools that we select or identify are going to have that level of maturity in mind. It looks like Federico's back.
Yeah, do we intend to have a cloud-based CI/CD webinar? We don't have, as far as I know, we don't have one planned for us on the Ranorex side. However, our partner tool, Travis CI, they are a cloud-based CI/CD tool. So I'm sure they have webinars up or other content available as well. So I definitely recommend checking out Travis CI, because if there's going to be a cloud-based webinar for CI/CD, Travis CI would be able to cover it.
That's a very good point that you make there, Henrik. So in Ranorex, I missed the possibility to use if, then, do. I can only see we have wait for, exists, and not exists. So the if and then has actually been added at the test case level. So within your test suite, we have something called conditions now in your test cases. So when you take a look at conditions, you'll be able to set a condition, whether it be via a data source or a parameter, to then utilize an if-then kind of statement. And we have another question about what does that self-healing means? So with self-healing, we're really talking about your tool having the capacity to find or identify elements when, let's say, that element is not currently on the screen, doesn't exist at that time, or maybe has moved. So the best case example would be, let's say you have a regression test and you execute the regression test. At the same time, the UI that you were originally using has been updated and maybe something's moved to a different place. With self-healing, what's going to happen is originally, if that element has moved and is not able to be found, instead of your test automatically failing, what will happen is your tool understands that a failure has occurred and then attempts to find the element that it originally was attempting to look for. Now, there are a couple of different ways that this can be performed. Inside of Ranorex Studio, we have a service that does the self-healing process for us. It's just a handy little bit of smart code. Other companies that maybe do image-based recognition, they might use artificial intelligence to be able to help to identify different aspects of the image as compared to the desktop. So what we're talking about when we say self-healing, we really just mean making sure your test doesn't fail. So just making your test more reliable by being able to track elements during that test execution process. All right, those are really good questions. Feel free to keep them coming. I'm here to answer, and so is John, and we're happy to share our knowledge to get your QA environments more mature.
Yeah, I'm here to definitely pass the difficult questions to Jason. So,
yeah.
But we are at about 11:47 Eastern. So if we are not getting any more questions, we should probably just go ahead and say thank you to everyone. We appreciate your attendance and your interaction. If you do have questions, definitely reach out to us. You can find our contact information here. If you have any questions, if you're looking to get into, say, UI testing tool, please reach out to us. Sales@ranorex.com. We'll be happy to help get you started as you try to transition into automated testing or grow your automation.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed your time with me, you can always reach out, ask for me directly, and I'll be happy to help you out with any tests or use cases that you have in mind. And if you already have Ranorex Studio, we actually have started a roundtable session that occurs monthly every quarter. So every month of the quarter, we'll do a roundtable session. This month, I've already posted a little poll where you can pick the technical topic that we're going to be covering for the month. So if you're interested, feel free to swing on by that roundtable, and we'll be happy to talk more.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for your time, everybody. Take care. Enjoy your extra 13 minutes back.